Is this book misunderstood? This is part 4 of reading every Stephen King book in chronological order. 1977's Rage. First, a massive trigger warning. This book review discusses mass. If you're sensitive to this topic, please keep scrolling. I don't blame you. Rage was Stephen King's 4th published novel, though it was published under the Richard Bachman pen name. It was actually the first to be published under the Richard Bachman pen name. Though it was Stephen King's 4th publication, having starting it in 1966 as a high schooler, it was actually the first book Stephen King ever finished. It just never found a publisher. Rage follows troubled high schooler Charlie Decker, recently expelled from school after attacking and almost killing a shop teacher. Charlie decides to take revenge on the teacher and the entire school by unaliving 2 of his teachers and taking his algebra class hostage, where he begins to make his fellow students get it on, as he calls it. He makes them examine their own lives and their own frustrations. And after making a fool of his fellow classmates and the teachers and the local police, Charlie releases all the students and then tries to have the police unalive him, which he is unsuccessful at. Given how closely this resembles to real life, horrors, this was a very challenging read for me. Rage is the only one of King's novels that he personally asked his publishers to allow to fall out of publication, because the book had been linked to at least 4 other mass shootings. And King believed the book could be an accelerant of violence, and he did not want his work to be used in that manner, which I completely understand and respect. Rage feels like a book written by a newer, less skilled author, though there are glimmers of King we would all come to know, especially in Charlie's quick quips and strained or non-existent father-son relationships, motif that appears in so much of King's work. The characters feel paper thin. Charlie is an irredeemable, insufferable asshole, and I did not particularly enjoy being in his head or in his POV. Charlie is unlikable in every sense of the word, which is fine for a character study. However, I think the book leaves far too much open to misinterpretation. In many ways, Rage is not dissimilar in tone and execution to films such as Taxi Driver or Joker, which is an interesting comparison because Martin Scorsese made Taxi Driver early in his career when he was younger, and the film itself inspired violence. John Hinckley Jr.'s obsession with Taxi Driver inspired his attack on then-President Ronald Reagan. Some years later, Scorsese would be attached as executive producer on Todd Phillips' Joker until he would leave the project citing personal reasons. In a Hollywood Reporter Roundtable interview, he stated that at his age, there are certain movies he feels more comfortable making. One can only wonder if Scorsese had second thoughts about putting a character study like Joker, which was already so heavily inspired by his past work, back into the real world. Rage is not a novel for everyone. It leaves itself open to misinterpretation and misuse by the misguided. It's not hard to imagine how this story could ignite the rageful and violent young mind of someone who is misguided. The book reads at times much like a fantasy fulfillment exercise, which does make it an uneasy read. Yet I'm unsure how I feel about the book being out of print. Though I don't think Rage is a book I will ever return to or think others should necessarily read, it is, however, still readily available online if you know where to look. Perhaps pulling it from publication only sends it into the shadows where it's harder to discuss. Perhaps an annotated edition of the novel with a deep analysis could be a helpful tool, though maybe the shortcomings in King's execution of the material keep the book from being a book that requires a more meaningful discussion. I'm not positive I know the answer to this. However, after reading Stephen King's Rage, it had me asking,